Welcome, everyone. Dr. Anthony Criniti IV here. You're on the Dr. Finance Live podcast today. Folks, we got an incredible guest today. And no, it's not Julie Foster. It's Joe Foster. It says Julie Foster in his name, but it's Joe Foster, folks. This is the founder of Reebok, the #1 sports apparel company in the world. Okay, so we got Joe Foster, and we're going to learn how he turned a business into an almost $4 billion operation. So let's give a warm welcome to Joe Foster. Welcome, Joe. How are you, sir?
Tony, I'm incredible. Thank you very much. I'm delighted, absolutely, to be on your podcast. It's fantastic. Yes, we're fine. We're absolutely fine, and it's good, really good. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Joe. Pleasure having you here. Definitely an honor. So, yeah, we're going to get started. First, Joe, I'd like, if you can you give us just like a 30-second summary of your biography, just to let the audience know about you. Then we're going to get into your story afterwards as well.
All right. If I can keep it as short as that, my grandfather was called Joe Foster, and he was born in 1880. He set up his own business in 1895 by making possibly the first pair of track spikes that we've ever seen, and he died in 1933. I was born in 1935, but I was born on his birthday. So I have the same birthday. That's why I have the same name. My grandmother said, oh, he's brought his name with him. So I'm born in 1935. A few years later, we had World War II. So not much education at that time. And I'm 10 years old before really education starts. But I studied engineering. Didn't stay into engineering, went into the family business, which was my grandfather's, J.W. Foster and Sons. And that was in the northwest of England. But being so close to World War II, in the United Kingdom, we still had to do national service. And my brother, Jeff, and myself, both the national service, came back to the J.W. Foster company and found that it was a failing company. As a failing company, we tried to get them to change, but my father and uncle, they just fought each other. Just like Addie Dassler and Rudy Dassler, they were just fighting. Rudy Dassler, he left to set up Puma, whereas the Foster family, they didn't leave. We had to leave, and we left, and we set up Mercury Sports Footwear, which after 18 months became Reebok. Is that big enough?
No, that's good. Thank you, Joe. All right, we're gonna get into the story in detail. So it's an incredible story, folks. So basically, as Joe was saying, he started the business, and then eventually it became as famous as it is today. So, but there's a lot of little details. But first, let's pick up on the story. And I think, Joe, maybe the best part is to start from your childhood, even maybe before your childhood, if you want to tell us about your grandfather, because your grandfather was a huge part of the story of Reebok. So you want to start from him maybe and just tell about like what he did, just summarize his story, and then we'll pivot into your childhood, and we'll keep going.
Okay. Well, my grandfather, as I say, born in 1880, at 15 years old, he made for himself a pair of track spikes. He didn't want to follow his family business, which was confectionery. He wanted to be a cobbler, repairing shoes, which is what his grandfather did. And he learned cobbling from his grandfather. But his grandfather not only repaired street shoes, he also repaired cricket boots. Now, cricket boots had spikes in the bottom. And we're pretty sure that my grandfather said to his grandfather, why have they got spikes in the bottom? And he would have said, it gives them grip. When they're running, when they're batting, when they bowl, they need that grip. My grandfather, he was a member of the local athletics club. And he thought, well, if I put some spikes in the bottom of my shoes, I can get some grip. Maybe they'll give me a bit of an advantage, and maybe I'll do better. Because he was just a sort of standard run-of-the-mill, middle of the field runner. Not that brilliant, but he made his shoes, and he became an unlikely second in his next race. Wow, that improved. But of course, all his teammates and club mates, they were looking at him and saying, just a minute, what's this? Is this cheating? Well, no, it's like, gives me an extra grip. Well, of course, he either had to take a good beating or he had to make them all shoes. And I think he chose to make them all shoes. So that was the start of his business. And so by the year 1900, he'd set up that business of J.W. Foster athletic shoes. In 1904, his shoes were worn by a man called Alfred Shrub, and Alfred Shrub broke 3 world records at one event in Glasgow. And then he went on, grandfather went on. By 1908, he had gold medals at the London Olympics. And of course, then we had World War I. Nobody wanted running shoes, they wanted army boots. He didn't make army boots, but what happened is that Fosters were repairing army boots. And my father used to record, well, whether he was exaggerating or not, but they used to scrub all the mud off the boots, and they used to say, and the water was more red than brown, because all these boots were coming back from Flanders. So World War II is over. Now, my grandfather's belly pop, his decade was the 1920s. Actually, in 1920s, and we have a letterhead from the 1920s, and down each side are all the football teams, all the teams he used to supply. But at the bottom also, the Antwerp Games in 1920, he states that he supplied all the athletes with running shoes. Now, in those days, Olympics were not as big as they are that we know it today, mainly athletics and things like tug of war as well. So, but that was quite a big statement. And what you call soccer over in America, over here, of course, in Europe, it's football. And he supplied over 90 teams, all the best teams you could think of in the United Kingdom. I don't know if you know much about United Kingdom soccer, but Man United, Man City, all the top teams, all of them he supplied. So that was incredible. But he died in 1933. And it's my father, his sons, my father and uncle, they took on the business. And as I sort of explained earlier, they were at war with each other. So our grandfather built this wonderful business as Foster's famous running shoes. That was the strapline that they had. And he supplied all really what we know now as the British Commonwealth, Canada, Australia, but they also supplied America. And this is after my grandfather died, but his sons had kept on the business, but there was an American, Frank Ryan, and his partner was Bob Janjak. They were both coaches at Yale University. And I still have the agreement they set together, and it was 200 pairs of running shoes a month were being shipped to Yale University, and Yale University were distributing those to other universities across America. So there's a big connection there with America. And that was my grandfather's company. But of course, as I said, the problem is that my father and uncle did not get on together. It was okay while grandfather was there, okay while grandmother was there. But grandmother died. She died probably about, must have been 50, I think it was after I came out, about 58, something like that, 57, 58, just before we left the company. Because once my grandmother had died, they just didn't speak. They just fought each other. And, you would know, being a finance person, that is not good for a company.
No.
That is not good. And we did our national service, and we came off national service. And I tried to get my father to sort of, come on, we have to change. And if we can't change here, come with Jeff and myself, and we'll set up another company. But I think he was too set in his ways, maybe 2 world wars, and a lot of things gone on. Maybe he felt, even in his sort of late 50s, he was too old to change. So Jeff and myself, we then had to leave the J.W. Foster Company, which my grandfather had set up.
Thank you, Joe. I just want to step back for a second because you gave us a lot of great information. So your great grandfather, I want to go back to him. From the way I understand it, he invented the spiked running shoe. Is that correct?
My grandfather did.
Yeah.
Yeah, my great-grandfather was the cobbler who, my grandfather got the idea of putting spikes into the bottom of his shoes.
Yeah, and that's what I want to ask you about. So he invented the spiked running shoe, but he got that idea. This is new information. He got that idea from cricket, you said. They have, I don't even know what, the cricket that well, but the sport of cricket.
Yes, the sport of cricket.
Sport of cricket has had a spiked running shoe at that time. He got that idea from there, and he focused it on running, specifically for running, right?
Yeah, cricket were boots. They wore cricket boots, which are
Boots.
A hard toe, and because they have a very hard ball and they play on grass, and in the UK the grass quite often is wet. So if you're playing on that and you're running, you're either bowling the ball, which is almost like pitching in baseball. If you're doing that, you can slip, but the spikes stop them from slipping. I think baseball, they have cleats, but what they had in cricket was just spikes in the bottom, a bit like golf. Golf had small spikes in the bottom. So grandfather didn't invent spikes, but what he did do is he used that and he developed that into a running shoe.
Ah, okay.
We know today.
And it would be completely different than the cricket boots, because number one, they're not boots, they're actual shoes. And the spikes were probably, I'm guessing, a lot smaller in order to fit this smaller shoe, right?
Well, they were actually boots in cricket. They wore them. They up to the ankle. The boots. They weren't shoes, but the spikes were definitely small. The spikes were only probably about 3/8 of an inch.
Okay.
No, whereas the spikes in the running shoe could be anything up to 1 inch long, because you're running on cinders as against grass. So it's okay. So we've established, and of course with the running shoe was a very lightweight shoe, whereas cricket boot is quite heavy, more like a normal boot, a climbing boot even. But they make them in white, but because boots develop, these things develop. Even today, there are sort of the low cut cricket boots now, but I think a lot of the top players, especially when you bat it, because somebody is throwing a very hard ball at you, and if it hits you on the foot, you need as much protection as you can get. So, and they haven't changed an awful lot. We used to make Reebok. We used to make cricket boots, but not these days. I think we've got away from cricket boots.
So it was definitely new technology in terms of footwear. I mean, this was a shoe that a footwear product that was never seen before. It's an improvement on footwear specifically, especially for running.
Absolutely. Yes, wow. Absolutely. Very lightweight, made of calf leather, and eventually they became kangaroo leather, which is very strong and very light. So very lightweight, but the spikes were sold into a special, you'd call it a clump. It was a special sole that you just sew onto the front of the shoe.
Wow. Okay, so wow, that's incredible. So that's an incredible backdrop to your story. So you have your grandfather, your father, and your uncle, and then yourself all in this picture, basically 3 generations. So you told us the story about up until when you actually started with, I believe you said, your brother to pivot on your own after World War II. But let's step back even further. So let's go back to your childhood. So what you grew up, we're at in Manchester, in England?
Well, we're just north of Manchester, and we're slightly elevated above Manchester. And during the war, we could actually see the result of dropping bombs. We could see all these flames. You couldn't see the flames, you could see the glow from the flames that was coming out of Manchester. So I was born in 1935. I guess I don't remember too much. I've got a little bit of memory before the war, but once the war was on, of course, we had no street lights. Wow. Everything was black. You couldn't put a light on in your house unless you'd got blinds down and covered. So everything was dark. So going out as a kid, playing out and around in the streets, it was all dark. And of course we had, we changed the clocks for summer. Well, we used to have double summertime. So instead of change 1 hour, we had 2-hour changes. So in Bolton, or where we were near Manchester, it was light until after 11 o'clock at night. So, and then in the morning, it was quite dark. So I think this was mainly to do with farming, mainly to do with how people saw the best way to handle the wartime years. They had double summertime, which was quite interesting. But, as a child, That's normal. It's like, what else would you expect? So for 6 years of my life, we were running about, and we didn't think that the war was any more dangerous than anything because we were young, and you grow up with that. And so it for us, maybe must have been for our parents, must have been very very wary, very more difficult to sort of handle. But for children, no, not for us. There was no school. Great. Yeah, we did do a bit of schooling, but it was in the teacher's house. Most of the male teachers had gone off part of the war effort, but the female teachers, we would go to their houses, and a few of us be taught in the front room probably until about the late 1944, when obviously we were invading, we were beginning to win the war, and then the schools started up again. They had been taken over. They'd been taken over for the war effort. They were used as, I think they called them air raid posts. So they had people there, in case there was an air raid, there were people ready to react. So after the war, though, school, they all came back again.
That's incredible, Joe. I've heard several of your interviews so far, and the one thing I don't think that they spend enough time talking about is the fact that you grew up, like this was your childhood. You grew up in wartime era. I mean, that's, and you got to see bombs in the next town, as you said, at some points. I mean, this structured your life to be like all these struggles. In my opinion, I think it really formed the Joe Foster of today. It built the kind of mindset that would eventually lead to a lot of the future success. I mean, actually, what you just talked about with the schooling system, I'm thinking of what's going on right now, where the kids today, they're experiencing virtual school in some cases almost 2 years now in some places of the world. I mean, that's got to be, it's got to be somewhat, has some kind of impact that we don't know about right now. So at some point in the future, so it could be probably positive. It'll be a struggle to get to that positive, but so. Yeah, that's incredible. Any thoughts?
We had 4 years of not having proper schooling. And when we talk about bombs, one of those bombs, well, a few bombs dropped on Bolton itself. And one actually very near to the J.W. Foster Works. And it blew in the window, the whole thing, blew the window in. And I remember going down with my father. We went down there, and instead of going through the door, we went in through the front window because there was no window there. And we did find a piece of shrapnel, a piece of the bomb. And we had that for many years, this piece of metal, which was obviously a part of the bomb. We kept it for many years. I don't know what happened to it, because when over the time we left, it was at our family home. And then, of course, you grow up, you get married, you leave your family home. So what happened to the piece of shrapnel, I don't know. But I can remember it very well.
So Joe, I don't know how to ask this question, but please don't take it as disrespect. I'm just trying to figure out from a wealth standpoint, if your grandfather built a business that's successful, I'm sure you grew up with a lot of money, but with that, to go into war, it doesn't matter how much money you have. If you're seeing that stuff, you're still going to be struggling at some point. Can you elaborate on maybe your economic upbringing and how that relates to this war setting, what effect that would have on you?
I think we have to sort of try and think back to the 1930s, and even before that. Running shoes, athletics and running shoes, that's a small business. Right now, what we're seeing sports companies are now street. Everything, that's where the volume is, that's where the money is. Grandfather, though, possibly in his day, yes, I would imagine, not rich, but nice, well off. He had a car. I mean, he had a car in the 1920s. In fact, well, when the war started, my grandmother, she had the car, and we called it a Renault. We all know it today as a Renault, but we used to call it a Renault. And unfortunately, this is a French car, and we're going through, and there was a crown wheel and pinion, which is part of the thing that drives the car, and that went, and that car stood in the garage for best part of 4 years because we couldn't get a spare part for the car. It was because France was occupied. So yes, I think the family were nicely off. Yes, they had good things, not rich in the way that the cotton manufacturers became rich and built lots of big things, but they were doing volume. Running shoes were quite small, but a nice business to be in. Now, totally different. Now athletic sports influences the world of fashion. In fact, all the big companies now are really called fashion companies, maybe driven by performance. Some are even driven by fashion itself. But it's now sport now influences not only footwear, it influences what we wear. So it's now a much bigger thing than it was in my grandfather's day.
Thank you, Joe. So, can you describe your teenage years? You know, how was let's move on to that decade. What, right before you said you were 23 and your brother was 25, I believe you said, when you created your own business. But what was it like growing up as a teenager, as a foster? Well, were you working a lot as a shoemaker, helping your grandfather and your father? I'm sorry, your father out?
No, we didn't do any of that. We grew up as normal teenagers. I mean, in those days, really, the social life was around the church. You know, we were part of the Scout movement, so we started off as the Cubs and then the Scouts, and that was a good sort of discipline that we learned there. And I don't know how disciplined the Scouting movement is today, but it was very disciplined for us, and it was really good. We learned an awful lot of individuality, what you can do for yourself. We used to go camping, so we learned all that. And then, of course, the church they had dances, social. You know, you went there. Apart from going to church, you would do all the social things. And that's where I first picked up a badminton racket, because we also played badminton, and badminton became a very important part of my early life. And so I was playing badminton, and of course, as usual, you know, there are scouts there. There are also guides there, so there are girls there. So you do the normal thing that when you're young and you have good social life and enjoy it. And I mean, that went on until at 17. I had an engineering background, but at 17 I joined the foster company. But at 18, I then went to do national service. Both my brother and myself, we both went to do national service. And national service was good because I mentioned playing badminton, and the services, they love sport. And by some very good fortune, I was spotted by the people who were sort of in control of badminton at that time. And for 12 months of my 2 years, I just played badminton and just toured with whatever as teams, and we played badminton. So yeah, very enjoyable. But I went in to do radar, and radar was, of course, after the war, we had to have a defense system, and radar was part of the defense system. So that's what I was doing during my national service, when, of course, I wasn't away playing badminton, but I was away playing badminton for most of the time. So, and I was coming back, you know, we had a good social sort of gathering of people, maybe 20 people were sort of in our group, and you all went to the same places. So you went to the dance halls and you did whatever. But national service took the men, we young men, took us away at different times. And when you came back, that social circle had gone. It didn't. There were just bits and pieces exist. And so a lot of the boys coming back after doing 2 years, they meet the girl that they've been with as part of the social group and got married. And I got married at 21. So 12 months after coming back, I got married. And that was a social life at that time. And
did you have any jobs though, Joe? Like, was there a lot of like kid jobs, you know, entrepreneurial, just like paper boy, bus boy, you know, anything to make a little money on the side? Did you have that during your teenage years?
I think in my early years, the nearest thing I got to that was really trading and swapping, trading toys. We used to trade toys. So you could have a paper round, so you could go and do that. But otherwise, no, I don't think there was that many opportunities. As Boy Scouts, of course, we used to do good deeds, as they say. So you go and you could get paid for that. In fact, we used to collect in those days what it was jam jars. So it's the glass jars that jam came in, and that was a sort of, I suppose today it's a bit like taking things back. So instead of reusing something, so it's looking after the environment. And in those days they used to take jam jars. Back then everything changed, and so now we're getting more conscious that we've got to be looking after the planet a bit more. So we're getting back to it. But mostly this is when the disposable part of life came in. Everybody decided that they didn't want to recycle anything. Now we're going back to recycling, but we used to do that as part of being scouts. So yeah, as youngsters, I don't think there were many jobs that you could do, and we were not invited to go down and work in the factory, do anything. We were not invited to do that. I don't know whether, I suppose it would have been probably nice, but I don't think my father wanted to work beyond his normal working hours. He never worked on Saturdays. I know that when we started our business we started as Mercury, but Reebok, when we started the business, we would be in every Saturday as well. So we'd be doing 6 days a week, certainly 5.5 days a week in the factory, let alone the time I would spend on marketing or printing, because I had my own little printer machine. I decided that I could print our brochures, and so I spent quite a bit of time designing that and printed the brochures. So, but that's when we started. But as a kid, no. As a kid, we were mainly what kids usually do, and that's go outside and kick a football. Go and kick a ball somewhere and get together with a lot of other kids and enjoy it.
Maybe in a minute or less, or can you give the highlights of your 20s and 30s aside from Reebok? We're going to talk about Reebok in a moment. Like you met Julie, I believe, and you want to tell about like the success stories or really the struggles that put the drive that pushed you into the direction of your life's path.
Well, Julie is my second wife. My first wife was Jean, and as I say, we met as part of a social group, and you get married, and of course we just bought we were buying. We had a mortgage on a small property when Jeff and I decided it was time. We had to leave the business, leave Foster's, and set up our own business. So setting up our own business, that was the. There was a lot of disappointment working for the family business. There was a lot of disappointment that they wouldn't listen. That things were going from bad to worse. And I used to say to my father, look, we've got to do something. And his response was, "When I've gone, when your uncle's gone, this business will be yours, and you can do what you like with it then." And I said, "Well, look, Dad, number one, we don't want you to go. We want you to stay around as long as you can manage to stay around. But this business is going to be dead long before you are. This business will be dead." Just didn't believe in it. It only survived for 2 years after Jeff and I left the business. It only survived for 2 years.
Is that right? So 2 more years, and then your dad's business actually fell apart. Meanwhile, you were thriving.
Yeah, my uncle died, and that was it. My father, we had left, so we weren't there to sort of pick up the pieces after my uncle died. And we say the business had been going. And my uncle, he did what his father had done, and my grandfather, and that was hand sewing the shoes. They call it turn shoe because they make it inside out. They hand sew it all around. Then they turn the shoe and then put this sole onto it. And that's what my uncle did. This is why we had 2 companies. My father did machine making soles. So they lasted the shoe in a way you would see a shoe made today. Mm-hmm. And then they used the machine to sew the sole on. This wasn't done by hand. So they did have 2 sort of different businesses going. And I think really that what happened is the business was going down. So my uncle's side of his business, he only had 3 people working for him. And when my uncle died, one of the guys, he left and went on his own and set up his own business. And that business is still going today. Somebody else owns it. It's a small business. It's called Walsh, and they make, actually they used to make, well, Walsh used to make hand sewn. They've now turned around to being a standard manufacturing business. But of course, it's too expensive to make footwear at the moment in the Western world. It's now all made in Asia. So the business that they have is just specialized for the type of countryside around the northwest of England. Nice little special business, but you don't grow beyond that. When we think of the Foster's business, it was doomed because they couldn't see the future, and it was necessary for Jeff and myself to see that future. And doing 2 years of national service took us away from the family, took us into looking after ourselves. It took Jeff to Germany, and in Germany, of course, he saw Adidas, he saw Puma, and when he came back, he was saying, "Look, we've got to change," but we couldn't make them change, so we had to leave.
That's brilliant. All right, Joe. So I guess we can start moving into, is there any other parts that you'd like to add to your story before, because we're going to cover several different topics today, but if there's anything else you want to just add to the story, your actual personal story.
On leaving the business, although my father knew we were not happy, we were actually probably going to leave. It was on the day that we left, and I walked into the office and I told him, "Jeff and I, we're going to leave." And he said, "Well, when?" Well, in fact, first of all, he didn't even look up. And I said, "Look, we're leaving." And because I'd got married, so I'd left the home, the family home. Jeff was still at the family home. So my job to go in and tell father that we're leaving. And when he did turn around, he turned around and he picked up a paper opener, which is like a knife, as you know, a paper, a letter opener, and moved towards me. And I'm thinking, what is he doing? And then he turned it around and he gave it to me. And he said, "Right, you can stab me now." And I'm saying, "Dad, this is nothing to do with that. We have to look after our future." But so I put the letter opener down, turned around and just left. And so it wasn't the most pleasant of times at that point. And Jeff was still living at home, so he kept out of of that discussion. So, but that's how we set up, and we got ourselves a nice, I say a nice little, it was a rather large old brewery. It was an old brewery building that we set up in Bury. Bury is a town close to where Bolton is, and Bolton was the town that the J.W. Fosters were in. And we set up this, and it was amazing. We couldn't use the top floor because the roof was just totally shot at. And when it rained, it just rained through. So the top floor was just covered in buckets and tin cans just to collect the water. And we had to use the middle floor because for whatever reason, in brewers, I don't know, the bottom floor had no windows. So the ground floor had no windows. So we were on the middle floor. And we had to put out.
Sorry, Joe, did you have a picture of this in your book? I remember seeing something like that. Was this it right here?
That was the J.W. Foster building.
Oh, okay.
That was the J.W. We don't have a picture of the building we went into because shortly after we left it, the building no longer exists. In fact, the J.W. Foster building no longer exists. That is now Bolton University. They knocked all that down. It's now Bolton University. So yes, and I think where we were in Bury, our first one, it is now it's now a swimming pool and a sort of sports centre. So it's all been redeveloped.
Were you able to repair your relationship with your father eventually in life, or? Eventually,
it took some time. Yes, I mean, mother was okay. She understood very well what was going on, but it probably took about 2 years, maybe 3, to sort things out. And yeah, that was okay. And we were successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Success proves it all.
Well, he probably never admitted it. He probably never admitted it that you know, we were right in the first place. And when the Foster business did close down, it closed down because they were actually going to knock it down. That's why the building, the local government had said, look, we want to take your building off you. This is why the company totally collapsed, because, but he got money for the building. And what my father said, if there's any machinery you want, you can take it. So we did take 1 or 2 pieces of machinery off it, but not too much, because it was so very old that it didn't really work for us. So yeah, 2 or 3 years after, and he realized that yeah, they can look after themselves.
Any advice for any parents out there who, how do I put this? They pressure their kids, or, you know, basically don't want to listen to their sons or daughters' advice on what the path they want to go?
Yeah, well, I think that times have changed. I think when we're talking about the 1950s, you know, you can do so much today you couldn't do, and they're used to children now. Children are used to growing up and having ideas. Right. So I think that is one of those things. I don't think parents need much advice now. I think they prefer to sort of just get on with it, guys. You get on with it.
Yeah, especially when the 5-year-olds teaching them how to run a computer.
Well, this is very true. I mean, it really is. Julie is much younger than I, so of course she is our technical expert, because for me, at 86 years old, I can't keep up with the technology, but I know the technology is there. And so Julie, yeah, she's my external hard drive. You know, when I mess up on something, she corrects me, as she did earlier on. You know, she'll give me all the information I need to keep things going.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. All right, so we're going to move in. I want to first, before I go anywhere with this, I want to talk about your book. So Joe just came out with a new book. It's called The Shoemaker. So here's the book right here. See, the founder of Reebok, untold story of the British family firm that became a global brand. And definitely get that book, folks. Here's the back cover. Joe, so you want to tell us a little bit about this book? Why did you decide? This is what I want to know. Why did you decide to write this? You just said 86 years old. I mean, you could have wrote this 50 years ago. Like, why now? Why are you?
Well, I did start about 7 years ago. And the reason I'm doing this is that we've got computers now. Everybody, you know, you don't look at Encyclopedia Britannica or any encyclopedia. You just Google it. You just Google it, or you Wikipedia it, whatever. And they were telling me how Reebok started. They were saying, this is how Reebok started. And this was Reebok, it was Foster's, just change the name. And I'm saying, no, just a minute, you know. And there was a photograph on Wikipedia of Joe Foster, founder of Reebok.
Uh-huh.
No idea who he is. Not a clue. Never even found out. Don't know. So I thought, we can, you know, let's get this right. You know, let's tell the story and let's get it right. What happened? You know, it took a lot of anger, a lot of sort of suffering, and, you know, in a family to do that split. It wasn't just a matter of changing the name. Yeah, it needed, story was there, because the story was something rather more important than just the change of the name. So that's why I sat down and started writing the book.
No, Joe, that's a valid point. So I'm sorry. You said you went to Wikipedia and you saw a picture of Joe Foster, who is another Joe Foster, of your story. Yes. That would have like been a low blow for anybody, I think, to see something like that after many years of building that.
Well, you know, whether I'm right or wrong, as far as I was concerned, there was a story there, a good story.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't just be sort of passed over and then the wrong people. No, and the story does start with my grandfather, and just how did Foster's start, and then why did we leave Foster's? You know, I think a lot of people know the story of Adidas. How you know, Adolf Dassler, who was Adi Dassler, and his brother Rudy Dassler, they, just like my father and my uncle, they didn't get on. They fought, and you know, so Rudy left and set up a different company. that is the story I think a lot of people know. Whether they know the whole story, they'd have to buy, I think it's a book called Pitch Invasion, which tells the early story of the Dazzlers. It wasn't written by any of the Dazzlers, so I don't think they like to acknowledge it themselves, but it tells the story. And I think it's good to get those stories, like Shoe Dog by, not for Nike. You know, you get the story and it tells you, you know, what Phil Knight had to do and what he went through from his garage. You know, he started and things, and it tells that story. And my story, there's a lot of things we did almost the same at the same time. He was in America though, which was a bit of an advantage because he was on the market that I wanted. I knew that was the market to be in, and he was there. But we did travel along somewhere, even though we've never met. I've never met Phil Knight. One of these days, maybe when we're over doing the trip with the book, and maybe I'll see if we can, you know, knock on somebody's door and find out where Phil Knight is. But that's why I started writing the book. Needed to put things right.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, well, I have a question for you. Can you confirm, does Adidas own Reebok right now? I don't really know the whole. We're going to get into that a little bit. Who owns Reebok right now?
Adidas bought Reebok in 2005.
Okay.
And they're right in the middle of the sale now. They've just sold it to ABG. I don't know if you're Authentic Brands Group. Authentic Brands, the main character is Jamie Slater, and his main man is Shaquille O'Neal.
Oh,
Shaq.
okay.
So Shaq loves Reebok. Shaq started with Reebok and his basketball career.
And the reason I was asking you, Joe, sorry to interrupt you. The reason I was asking, because to go back to your point, was that I was searching Reebok's website and I couldn't find the Joe Foster story. I couldn't even find your name. So, you know, that's more reason for what you're doing. I think it's very important.
But you see, it wasn't about Joe Foster. You know, I never thought that this was the Joe Foster story. It was Reebok.
Reebok
You know,
story, yeah, exactly.
Reebok. We didn't. I didn't want anybody to confuse one thing from the other. The Fosters with anything. This was about Reebok. So it's always been about Reebok for me. It's only when we're at this point now where, yeah, well, let's tell the story properly. And if you think of J.W. Fosters, they were really famous. You know, what my grandfather did was absolutely incredible. And had we not started Reebok and Reebok become successful, his story would have been forgotten. Yeah. Just totally forgotten. So it's as much of the Foster family for me, and the success and the time that's gone through as anything. So it was not about Joe Foster. Now I have to sell Joe Foster now. I need to sell him now because we need to tell the story. But ABG, they've just bought the company. It actually completes. They started off sometime in October, and then actually completes at the end of February. So we're probably another 6-7 weeks, and then it will be at the end. But they have now repositioned. They're doing a lot of things. In fact, I have another podcast with a guy who is part of the ABG group tomorrow. So
oh wow,
that should be interesting. Yeah, maybe we should have had this after, because but at that time we'll know an awful lot more. So that's interesting, and they seem to be a happy company. You know,
well, no worries. Let's take a note of that, because you're going to be on Clubhouse next week or 2 weeks from now. So we can just bring the follow up to that story, folks. Come to Clubhouse and get the follow up to that story.
It could be very interesting. Yes, indeed. So when you say now, yes, ABG. So now the ABG, I think they're a $10 billion company now. They own a few brands. Juicy, they own Barney's. And they own 1 or 2 brands now in America. I think maybe 5 or 6 brands. But now Reebok is the biggest buy for them. This is a big buy. And Shaq, I know we used to read about Shaq. Shaq used to go into Jamie's office, and Jamie used to say, you know, you get these messages. When Shaq comes in, the first thing he talks about is Reebok. And the last thing he talks about is Reebok. And that's what, and he said, yeah, buy me that company. Because Adidas, of course, Adidas paid a lot of money for the company. They paid nearly $4 billion. And when you pay that sort of money, you own it. And when you own it, you make it work for yourself, which they did. The idea was that Reebok and Adidas together would be competition for Nike. They'd be really as big as Nike. Never worked that way. Adidas grew quite a bit. Reebok shrunk quite a bit. Adidas wanted Reebok as a fitness company, and Adidas wanted to stay as a sports performance company. And of course, that meant that Reebok were not playing in the same fields that they'd been playing in. So if you're not playing in those fields, your business goes down. But ABG now are forecasting the growth of the company to be 5 billion this year. And they're less than 2 billion at the moment. So to get to 5 billion, but I think that's a lot to do with the fact that they have a lot of distribution that exists. So the setting about that distribution, it's going to be an exciting time. It really is. Reebok really is, and I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, superb.
That's incredible. Thank you, Joe. I want to step back because we're going to be talking about Reebok in detail, but so I have a lot of entrepreneurs that watch this, a lot of people who are even finance students, people just love learn about money. So this is a specialized example of a financial success story. But folks, to understand this success, we have to step back and just like when you're learning a new stock, you got to learn the history of that industry, right? So what's the history, if you can give like 1 minute summary of the history of the shoe business for us, like key highlights, key moments that you already mentioned, the story of the spike shoe with your grandfather, but what other external things that you think might be important maybe in the past 100 years or so?
Well, I think the most important thing is timing. What is happening? We had the Industrial Revolution, and so we've got lots of mills, lots of factories, everything. And then we have these recessions where, sales are not that good, and people need to do something. So people continue to do sport, and sport grows, and sport grows, and sport has been growing ever since we set up with Reebok. We never ever went into recession at all. The worst time for the industry has been COVID, because COVID has stopped everything. But even in 2008, when the banks really caused a lot of problems, sport continued to grow. The companies had problems, but we had lots of recessions before that. But as a company, as Reebok, people want to be in sport. People buy more sports products, and sport has sort of influenced the street. So now everybody wants street. Even today, now with COVID, people are working from home. They don't put a suit on. They put jogging pants on. They put they put stuff on that they feel comfortable in. So this is where sport has been such an incredible product, because it continues to grow and it continues to influence. So for me, that's been the biggest change over that 100 years, is that sport and its influences have grown and grown, because I'm reading a book about the future. Surprisingly enough, there's a guy in New York, he gave it to me about 2 or 3 weeks ago when we're in Bangkok. And it's about the future, and it's about the fact that AI is taking over, things are becoming everything's going more into robotics and automation and AI. And so people are going to have to be doing something else. And what else are they going to do? Whether they're going to be paying people for doing nothing, people will then want to play sport. They want to do more things. So, this is what is happening in life. This is where these things go on. So people's pastime, people are going to do whatever it is that they name as sport. And these are for me the way that this is going in this world. And I think we all have to accept the fact that as humans will be doing less physical work, and to keep fit. You just think about it, all these gyms that have opened, yeah, everybody now is keeping fit, and it's sport. So that's where the growth is. It's going to be still there. People want to do these things. They want to keep fit. They want to keep active, and sport's going to keep them active.
You know, Joe, that was a brilliant answer. I completely didn't expect you to say that. But to understand the shoe industry, you have to understand the sporting industry.
Yes.
I want to ask a pivot question here, which is, I don't want to go too deep in this because I know we could, just maybe in a minute or less. Like, why is sports so important? And the reason I'm asking this question, I remember, so Nelson Mandela, I'm a big fan of his, and I can't quote exactly what he said, but the paraphrase, he was making a speech and talking about sports. He was a boxer, when he spent a lot of time growing up. And, I'm in the martial arts as well. So I've been exposed to a lot of course, I guess sports, if you can call it that. But sports, he's basically said, was an outlet it's a necessity for humanity, like an outlet of their anger, their emotions, and all the primitive things that we have. And if you take away sports, like, you might be directing humanity towards war, the complete extreme. And I don't know if you noticed this too, but when they shut the sporting events down in the past 2 years for the great pandemic depression, I noticed a lot of people, at least in Philadelphia, where I'm from, they're very hardcore sport people. I can sense the tension that was boiling up in the people, because they weren't enabled to go out and watch their sports. They weren't able to watch their Eagles game and their Phillies, and it was boiling up. So what is this relevancy to sports? Because it's extremely connected, like you said, to the growth of sports and the growth of the footwear and sporting out goods. There's got to be some connection. Why, from a deeper level, that this is happening in humanity now and not 1,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago or even 150 years ago.
And we're competitive animals. We competing for food, competing for everything, competing for love, competing, whatever it is. And sport is a form of doing this. Sport is competition, it's interaction, it's how people get together, it's how they face challenges. We all love challenges. And if you're good at sport, then people look up to you. And so people more and more want to be participating in sport. A lot of people, we went through a phase where you're watching television because television was a new thing. This grows. Now, a lot more people just want to get out there, do some running. You've got to go back to the late 60s when the running boom started. And the running boom started in America. And this is why I wanted to get Reebok into America. And the running boom, by the mid-1970s, we had Runner's World. We had a magazine that had started off as a single A4 page. By 75, was a full glossy 100 pages telling you where to go, the next running meeting, whatever it is, who won this, and everybody bought it. If we were running, that was your Bible. So that attracted so many people. It attracted me because we were in that business. We were there at the right time, and we could supply that business. And that's what I wanted to do. And eventually got into America. In America, people are so open to ideas. And the rest of the world are just waking up to these ideas, something you can do, something different, and enjoy yourself and burn off that energy. Like I say, you burn that off, you become less aggressive. You just use it in a different way, use it in a useful way. And so a lot of people, they're not just playing sport, they are sport. It's like going out and doing things. So it's using your energy. It is a social thing. And I think it's prowess as well. You want to show how good you can be. I love playing badminton because I was pretty good at it. So that's okay. And you enjoy that. And it's good at workouts. If you're working out, it's good when you finish it and you think, you're hot, you need a shower, whatever it is, but you feel good because you've done something. Sitting down, just reading, sitting down, doing things, That's okay. It maybe makes you money, maybe it's your job, but then you get up and you go to the gym,
Mm.
and you burn off all the energy that you've not been burning off. You've been thinking, and you probably feel tired because you've been working on a seat. But when you get up and you do something energetic, it just revives you, makes you feel good.
I
And
just got an
so,
idea, Joe. Sorry to interrupt you. As important exercise is for the individual, I think maybe we can restate it as sport is kind of the exercise for humanity. Like it's
yeah,
our way of letting it out, let that energy out.
well, we're animals. We need to keep fit. As animals, we need to do it. So that's it. One of these days, maybe we will become robots. I don't know, but not in my lifetime. But the future, as I was saying, the future is very interesting. Reading these books about what people think. Okay, we know what they've put down there. It's a guide, because it won't necessarily be there. Something comes along, be it COVID, be whatever, and just puts a little twist on it. Climate change. These things are open on what people see for the future. But it's and sport is part of it. So making things to enjoy your sport, making the right footwear, the right apparel, the right equipment, the gym, making that, it's good. So that's why the business is. It's not a business; it's a passion.
Mm.
It's part of life, and you make things better for people to enjoy things, and that is really what I believe is it's the future. It's what we're doing now with sport, and that's why sports business for me is the biggest influence really around for all our lives and all our futures.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. All right. Can you maybe summarize what is the process of making a shoe? Maybe like a minute or less. Like how do you make a shoe? I'm sure you're going to give me two answers. One pre-Reebok and then post-Reebok. So however you want to go with that.
Well, the process of making a shoe, of course, I mean, the idea of a shoe is to protect your foot and to give it the best opportunities to make sure that you walk okay, you can run. And of course, we're in specialization in sport. So you make a sports shoe as against a street shoe. Now we find that sports shoes are so much better than street shoes when it comes to performance, to sort of having a nice cushion under when you're walking. And street shoes are okay if you go into a dress place. So you dress up, you put a suit on or whatever. But even these days, we see people in shoes, in sports shoes with a suit, dress suit. So shoes, I mean, over the generations, it's changed and it continues to change. But you need to learn a bit more about the different, whether you just slip lasting, whether you doing normal lasting methods, using it and sort of building it on an insole. You need to learn a bit about shoemaking to say, what happens. These days, we make the shoe now as light as we can do. And of course, we use as little machinery as we can do. I think slip lasting is probably the latest, but there's so many different ways of making shoes. Like if you had a Wellington boot, if you want a boot with a rubber boot, they do slush molding. They do different. There's so many different methods that you specialize. And of course, and I think with when you look at sports shoes and you look at Nike, and then they came up with for cushioning. And so they use so different things with Reebok. Of course, Reebok, we got the pump, and pump again. It's a great marketing thing because physically you can see it, physically you can do something with it. So you make shoes for different reasons. You can make them at a cheap price, or you can let people desire. Like Nike now. Nike is probably the most famous and the most and got the biggest sales. They're globally #1. And they bring out special makeups. They might only produce 5,000 pairs, but they will be snatched off the shelves. They'll just go, and people won't wear them. People today are collecting them, so they're becoming collectibles. And some may buy them for maybe $100 to $200 and be selling them for $2,000. So it's a business. It's everything. So shoes are whatever it is, all over. Women. just love women's shoes. It's fantastic and what they can do with them. Because I think women probably have more sort of fashionable shoes than men do, because men just tend to have sports shoes these days. So shoes are everything. It's and the manufacturing, I think, whichever way you look at it, it will continue to grow, continue to change. The technology is not really very clever. Or probably it is clever, but it's not very scientific. The technology in footwear is quite simple, really, and but it's a lot of cushioning. Today, it's cushioning and comfort. And
most of it's automation, though, right? They make the shoe today like in a factory. It's not like handmade like when you were growing up. It's most of it in the big.
There's a lot of automation, but there's also a lot of handcraft. There's a lot of craftsmanship, and this is why the shoe industry moved out of America, moved out to the UK, moved out of Europe, and went to the Far East. And the reason it went to Asia is that they have a lot of people, and it's surprising how many people it takes to make these shoes. A lot of things you can automate, but what you'll find out with automation is that you end up with one shoe instead of a variety of shoes. Everything comes this, and we're not animals that will stay with one shoe. We want variety. So whether the artisan will come back, to some extent, but whether the technology on making shoes can actually take it away from, we'll say, the Asia, or they could take it away from Asia, only when Asia have the same sort of disposable money that they have in the USA, and they don't. I know when I first went to America, it was 1978, and I went to the NSGA show in Chicago. And running was really getting big then, and I was still trying to get into the market. And Walmart came up, and they said, we'll buy 25,000 pairs of shoes. And we've been advertising in Runner's World, we were known, but we didn't have that distribution. And buy 25,000 pairs of shoes at that time for our factory was about 6 months' work. But we knew that if we got 5 stars, which is what we were looking for to get on the market, and we needed 5 stars from Runner's World. We knew if we got that, we needed help. So I've been looking around for help. But then Walmart, he said, well, we also need a better price. and I thought, okay, that means that we've got to go to Asia. We've got to go to South Korea, because that's where they could do it. And South Korea, they could make the shoe for less than half the price. And the quality was good, really good. So they could make the product. They could also do the volume. Now, that is still the same thing. Those shoes have still not come back into Europe. We're still not manufacturing them in Europe. It's all in Asia, Vietnam, you name it, all in those countries where there are plenty of people. You can automate the sewing of the upper, putting the upper together. You can do it, but then you can't do the fancy pieces, the specialized areas. That can only be done a bit at a time, and sometimes it can only be done by a worker handling the product. So I think we're still some way from totally automating the product of shoes, and then it's the variety. That will be the problem. How do you make this special shoe? Like I say, Nike are making a special colorway and a special shoe. One of Johnson's shoes, whatever it is, the Air Jordans and that, they made those special shoes, and they sell that batch, and then they turn to something else. And so it's the variety. As humans, we like variety. So it's that variety, and with footwear, you see it. And the brands now, people look at the brands. They love Adidas. They love Nike. Not as much as they love Reebok. Yeah, they love Reebok even more.
Joe, while we're at it, I'm looking at your background. You want to give us a quick just description of what the shoes are that are behind here? I'm sure they have some significance. You got your books in the background.
Yeah. The book's in the background. The other shoe is it's signed by Lewis Hamilton. Do you know Lewis Hamilton? Do you know Formula One?
Yeah.
Formula One. He is the world. Well, he's in fact he isn't the world champion. But he's got I think it's 8 world championships, and so Reebok was sponsoring Lewis Hamilton a number of years ago, and that is a pair of shoes that he actually signed. So I've got a signed pair of Lewis Hamilton's. They're high tops. They're Reebok high top, and so we signed those. But we have 1 or 2 different special shoes that are collected. Mainly they're at Boston now in the archive, because that's where they should be. Julie and I, we travel a lot. We're not here all the time, so we send them over to the Boston archive, and we'll be over there, and we will visit. We're over in America we start in May to do a tour, and we'll definitely get around to the archive in Boston and see what is happening now with ABG, see what they're doing, and it's going to be very, very interesting. But yes, that was Lewis Hamilton. Those were his shoes.
Thank you, Joe. That's a pretty cool shoe. I like that. I like that a lot. What were the major events that led to the success of Reebok? I know you already talked about it. Can you summarize it, maybe 30 seconds?
Aerobics. I can do it in one word. Yeah, we were doing very nice here. As I said, I alluded to the fact that Runner's World, they became such a big influence to the sport that Bob Anderson, who was the publisher, decided he could tell everybody which were the best shoes to wear. And so he said the number 1 shoe is, I'm sure it was Nike at the time, and it probably was Nike. And so everybody, if you think of it, there's 350 million Americans, 10% running, 35 million runners, maybe 10% of those 3.5 million would want to buy the number 1 shoe. Well, could they get it? No. They're being made in Japan. They're being made in the East. You can't turn it up that quickly. And all of a sudden, everybody wants this shoe. So it took 12 months to happen. By that time, Bob Anderson decided this is the number 1 shoe. So you've got all these shoes now just about coming in. Nobody would want them because we want the new number 1 shoe. He changed that though, because the industry, as you can imagine, were really up in arms about this number 1 shoe. Changed it to star ratings, whereas 5 stars were the best shoes, and 4, 3, 2, 1, whatever it is. And you could have 3 or 4 5-star shoes, which meant instead of there being 1, you can have a choice. And I knew we could make a 5-star shoe. I knew we could do that, but that was our job. And we did. We got a 5-star shoe. So in getting that 5-star shoe, that got us into America, and we're a running company. Down in Los Angeles, there's a guy called Angel Martinez. His wife is going to aerobic classes. He didn't know. Nobody knew what aerobic classes are. And she came home, and she was there with her friends. Frankie was really loving it. And Arnold, he asked Frankie, he said, what are you doing? Oh, these aerobic classes. What do you do? Well, we're exercising to music. Really? Can I come down and have a look? Yeah, why not? Off he went. Next time Frankie went, he went to have a look at aerobics. He saw the instructor there in sneakers, and half the class in sneakers. The other half, no sneakers. They were just in barefoot. And he thought, why don't we make a shoe, especially for these aerobics classes? Just a nice glove leather upper and a cushion sole and a little Union Jack, which Reebok were doing, a little Union Jack on the side. He went up, he took the red eye up to Boston, and he had a word with Paul Fireman. Paul, well, what's happening in Los Angeles? Fantastic. And Paul saying, slow down, slow down. Oh, I don't know. You know, why do we want to be making shoes for these girls do dancing? Paul, it's going to be big. Well, you know, if it starts to grow, we'll do something. Arnold wasn't put off. He went round to the back door and had a word with Steve Liggett. Steve Liggett was our production man at the time. And he persuaded Steve to get him 200 pairs of aerobic shoes, this nice glove leather. I didn't know a thing about it at all. He got the shoes. He gave them to the instructors. and everything's going on. Of course, he made them in glove leather. Glove leather, you could just tear it like a piece of paper. And the shoes fell apart. But the girls loved them so much. They were not just wearing them for the aerobics. They were going to work in them. They were going everywhere in these nice, soft shoes. So they fell apart. They bought some more. They just bought them apart. I think if that had been in anywhere but the USA and probably anywhere but Los Angeles, Reebok would have been dead. Reebok would have been dead. We cured the problem. We got some nice soft leathers, which were more garment leathers than glove leather. And then we have Jane Fonda. She bought a pair and she used them in her videos for her fitness videos. And it just took off. We were a $9 million company at that point. And the year after, we're $30 million.
Wow.
Year after that, $900 million. Sorry, $90 million. Then $300 million. Then $900 million. So in 4 to 5 years, we've gone from $9 to $900 million. And that's what created. All of a sudden, from being a running company, we became a woman's company because we made these shoes specifically for women on a women's last, so it was tighter and only in women's sizes. So all of a sudden, Reebok just became number one. We overtook Adidas, we overtook Nike, and we became the number one. And that was what made Reebok. Arnold seeing an opportunity down there, and Reebok, because we were not known like Adidas, like Nike, Brooks, Saucony, we're not as big as those in those days. So we were not known. This known in the running community, few running people knew us because they were buying our product. All of a sudden, Reebok is this wonderful women's company, and we'd grown. And by the time we got to nearly $4 billion revenue, I decided to retire because we become corporate.
Yeah.
And when, the challenge had gone. I mean, there's been many challenges, but the challenge had gone then, and it was just a matter of how big can you grow. And we'd done lots of things. It was a marvelous time. That growth was absolutely fantastic. To enjoy that growth was really something that, difficult to believe, but the company was on a high. Everybody was part of that company. And that was fantastic. We had this Monte Carlo pro celebrity tournament that we put on, and we had a lot of celebrities from Hollywood, from Los Angeles there with Frank Sinatra. We had Sean Connery. We got all of them. I've got a list here: Linda Evans, Joan Collins, Roger Moore, Jane Seymour, Chuck Norris, Robert De Niro, Michael Caine. All these people. We had Charlton Heston, Veronica Howell. All these people. They were coming to Hollywood. They were coming to Monte Carlo, and they were playing in this tournament. So it was fantastic to host that, and I had the privilege of hosting it, which was great. And I'm flying around the world at least 3 times a year. I'm arriving wherever I'm arriving. There's a limousine to pick me up. We go to the best hotel. We dine at the best restaurants, and it's great. But you're living in a world that was not really me. It was like, wow. And they're all nice people, fantastic people to talk to be with. But I thought it was time to move away. I did move away, but and I stopped having a day job. Okay, I'm retiring, so I retired. But the phone never stopped ringing. It's like, Joe, what did we do? I mean, we'd grown so rapidly. Joe, what happened with this? Even the IRS wanted to know what our agreement was with when we started it all off. So it was quite entertaining. And but even up to today, really, it's people ask questions. We went to Dubai, and I ended up with the Reebok team, MENA, which is a Middle East, North Africa team. And we were talking to 80 countries. They had brought these together. So we're talking to 80 countries, telling the story. So it's a bit like the Eagles and Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave. So that's Reebok for me.
So what you retired in 1989? What have you been doing since then? Like you said, because of the in the Eagles analogy you just made, basically you just been I telling the stories and traveling the world, just relaxing, I guess, right?
Just relax and yeah, just enjoy, listen to things. And I had to keep coming back. I had to keep on making trips because we're up to this. When we had apartheid in South Africa, and we had a South African distributor there, and we just had to shut down on it, because it was like, as far as America was concerned, if you were doing anything in South Africa, you were feeding apartheid. So we had to pull it. So there was so many things. We had a court case there we had to go to. We got settled and it was okay in the end. But yeah, there's so many things that kept bringing me back to Reebok. And I think with ABG now, I hope that our tomorrow's conversation, we'll be talking about the future. We're talking about, how is Reebok going to get to that 10 billion? When are we going to get to 10 billion? So yes, I retired and sat back quite a bit, but it's bigger challenges. The challenge is there again now. How do we? Well, if the challenge is there, I need the book to become a bestseller. That's my challenge now. No good writing a book if you're the only one that reads it. So yeah, the challenge is now to get the book to become a bestseller. So
well, you're going to love Clubhouse, Joe, because we got tons of influencers there, and you'll have several thousand people probably to tell your story to, including a lot of big influencers. So maybe they can do stuff to help you. I mean, you never know who's going to be on that stage. So the more you get the message out, the better that you increase the likelihood of the book's success. So,
absolutely. Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Right. Thank you, Joe. It's an incredible story. So I have several questions here, and I know that you're on a time limit, so I would like to maybe stick around. I have my whole afternoon open for you. It's a cold day here in Philadelphia. It's the coldest day on record, as I was telling you before, in 3 years. So I'm here for you, but I want to respect your time. What should family members do business together? I mean, I know you've experienced this situation. I often talk about it being a delicate situation, but what's your thoughts in general? Should family members do business together? Well, maybe a minute or so.
I would probably say no, but because it's highly difficult. You're a family, and therefore you're permanently a family. But I think we were lucky. Jeff and I were very lucky that the fact that Jeff loved the factory. He loved making shoes. So we had this arrangement, and Jeff said, I'll look after the factory. Joe, you do everything else. So I got everything else, whatever it was, designing, marketing, traveling, selling, meeting people. I mean, I used to just, back in those days, just jump on an airplane and go to America, go to the NSGA show, or go into Europe, go wherever we needed to meet people. We didn't have mobile telephones or cell phones. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have computers. I was lucky if I had a calculator. Everything else, had to be done more or less by hand, or I had a handful of American Express travelers checks and just jump on a plane and go. And phoning, making telephone calls in those early days, we didn't have satellites. We were satellite and phones, smartphones now is great, but we had to rely upon these cables going across the Atlantic, and those cables could get pretty busy. So placing a phone call either from the UK to America or the other way around took time. You get the telephonist to sort of say, look, I want to make a call, give her a number, and she would probably say, well, we're a bit busy at the moment, I'll call you back. I said, right, okay. So I looked after everything else, which meant an awful lot of different things I had to do and meet a lot of different people. So we were lucky when it came to Jeff and I. We never had a crossword. My father and uncle, they were always at each other's throats. In fact, Jeff and I had to pull them apart on more than one occasion. They were fighting. Like, what are you doing? Didn't happen with Jeff and myself. We just got on. But I guess there can be lots of challenges, particularly when, as Jeff and I, we were 50-50, half of the company each. And yeah, Jeff was fun. And I probably did a lot of stupid things, probably things that he probably thought, oh, what's he done that for? But, providing we kept, the orders kept coming in, we kept making a little bit of money. I think he was just very happy to keep that factory moving. The big disappointment, of course, is that he died just as we got to America, just as we broke into that market. So he didn't see the success. He didn't see that growth. He didn't see, and you wonder, if you could change anything in life, you would change the things that are impossible to change. That Jeff, to have died at that time was tragic, but it probably drove me on to work to make sure we keep going. And yes, you just need that resilience. You just need to keep going. And so family, it's good to have family, but I think it can give you more challenges than probably help. They may be the people you can trust the most in life. and I think when you do grow a business, you've got to put your trust in a lot of people. And you've got to have integrity, so that if you say something, you do it. Those people can believe in you. And right now, I'm saying that, yes, I did employ quite a few of the family later on, but I think really it's if you start something like Jeff and I did, you could end up fighting more than you end up working together. But,
thank you, Joe.
Me.
Appreciate it, Joe. All right, Joe. So I'm going to skip some questions and just go right into the template questions, and then if you have time afterwards, then we can go back. That's totally your call. Okay. There's just some important ones I always cover here. All right. So just, I would say 30-second answers will be on point. Can one book change the world?
One book, I suppose historically, maybe it has. And I think books have a great influence. And yes, to an extent, they can change the world, but it's usually one or two people's thinking that goes into that book. And there's a lot of books you need to read. A lot of people have different opinions. As I say, I've got this book which is a futuristic book, and it's very interesting. A lot of facts in it, and I think that it's a matter of whether you can read enough and take in enough facts that can sort of point you into the direction of the future. Otherwise, it's what people dream of. And so probably my answer was no. Would influence maybe, but change, I don't know.
What role has networking played in your life?
I think it plays more now than ever, because I think networking, if you can go back to the 1950s, I don't think anybody had heard of networking or entrepreneurs. These are words which have grown with the way that public now view our existence in terms of working, and that we need networking. And I believe networking right now, and this helps. Computers really do help with networking. Networking, I just wish we'd have had something more where in my early days that we could have networked easier, but you only could network them within your local area. Now networking is global. So I think it's fantastically important to network.
Thank you, Joe. And on that same note, we're talking about an extension of that. Is mentoring important? And who were some of your mentors?
It's hard to say. I know that you read the book, I had a number of people that really did help. And whether they were mentoring or not, again, I think that's another new word in in my life, mentoring. I mean, I do a little bit now. which I hope helps people. But I had a guy who ran a shoe factory, and right in my early days, the shoe industry was moving out to Asia, and a lot of factories were closing down. And I used to go to these factories because they had an auction. You used to auction off all the bits and pieces. And I met this man who used to go to every auction, and he never used to bid for anything. He used to sit there, and when the auctioneer tried to get a bid for something and it didn't work, nothing there, rather than just pass, he would just look at my friend John, and John would just nod. And so he'd take everything. So nothing was ever left in those factories. He'd take whatever it was, stuffed crocodiles, stuffed bears, you name it. He'd take every item. And I asked, we got to know each other, and he said, why don't we travel together? We're both from the Northwest, and most of the sales were going in a different area. And he said, why don't we go together? So we went together. And I said, John, what do you do with all that? All those items that nobody wants, that you just pick up? Oh, he said, we just store them and maybe we'll use them. So he took me into his into his mill there. He had all these items, and I saw a machine there that I wanted. Oh, I'd like one of these, John. How much do you want for that machine? Oh, I said, can I buy it? I said, no, you can't buy it. I said, can I rent it? No, you can't rent it. You can have it. Let me have it back when you're done with it. Oh, I said, you don't want it? No, I said, you take it. And I must have had 3 or 4 machines off him, and the same deal. Let me have it back. Not only did he let me have the machine, he would put it onto his factory's wagon. His men would bring it down, put it on my production line, wire it up, and I couldn't pay them. He just didn't want it. Now, you know, that man, he would just help. And I had a lot of people who helped at the right time. You know, when we nearly went out of business at one time, our distributor in the UK, he did something, well, he went out of business. And of course, nearly took us out. But all the friends, all the people I knew just started sending orders. You know, oh, can you make me 200 pairs a week of this? And they just came in. And that was integrity. That was networking. That was making sure that you were a good friend, and they were good friends. And that was very important to me, very important. So, you know, when it comes to networking and relying on people, you've got to be relied on too. So mentoring, I think it's good to mentor if you get the opportunity. But again, you know, you can only do it to a certain extent, because a person has to have their own idea on things. And, you know, allow them to make mistakes. People making mistakes, not a problem. You learn an awful lot from it. And, you know, it's just another place to start again.
Thank you, Joe. So mentoring, just to be clear, mentoring, you do need to have, you should have a mentor. Should everyone have a mentor if they want to be successful?
I don't think it's over necessary, but I think it's good to be able to ask somebody questions. I think it's good that you can bring yourself to talk to somebody and ask the questions, as against trying to do it totally on your own. If you look around, yes, you know, you will find that if you ask a question, you can then find yourself a mentor. But sometimes, you know, some people just don't sort of pluck up that courage to ask the questions that they need help. A lot of people, and arrogance is one of the things that stop a lot of people who think that they can do it, you know, and I think you need to be as humble as you can do, and then you will get the right mentoring. But it's a good thing. I think mentoring is good, but again, you do definitely need to know where you're going, what your ideas are. You need to be, I don't say independent, but I think what you do need to have is a good vision of what you want. and be willing to take your risks.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Maybe in 30 seconds or less, what are your favorite financial books, if any, or business books?
I'm trying to remember when I last read it.
How about this one, right?
I
It
think
is a business book now. I know you don't look at it
Yeah.
that way, but it's a business book. It's
Yeah.
a case study for people that were my financial students. They could read this and see what it takes to grow a business. You know?
It is a business book, yes, and I think again that business books are fairly new again in our life. You know, it's something that probably before I retired, I can't remember. Anyway, I can't remember where I would be in reading a business book because it's so long since. You know, and I probably did. I probably read quite a bit about this. It's like financing today. Financing today is so different. So different. You can get finance in so many different ways. Back in my day, it was difficult going to the bank. The banks were not at all helpful. You know, they wanted more collateral than you could even dream. So you know, we did get nicely financed in the end, and that was okay. But financial books, probably not too many. Probably not too many because, you know, in my early days. But I do think that now there is so much out there. There's so much that you can learn, either on your computer or looking at the financial books and looking at experiences. You know, it's good to read about somebody's experiences. But if I was reading a book, I usually like to read a bit of fiction or Winston Churchill. I used to like Winston Churchill's experience. I think it's more experiences than financial books. I think, you know, how you cover experiences and what you do. But then again, Winston Churchill was never a rich man. he always needed help. But, you know, he was famous.
Thank you, Joe. Do we need money to survive?
Yes. Yeah, money is essential.
Essential, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is. To survive, it's essential. Unless you're, what's he called, Bear Grylls. And I don't know if you know it, but he's the chief scout these days, and he can go and live in the wilds and look after himself. And maybe he doesn't need money, but yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, that point you just made, like that was in my last book, The Survival of the Richest. I try to be creative and think of examples. Actually, my first book, Necessity of Finance, examples of situations where you don't need money. And it was kind of like what you were talking about. But even in that case, you know, like you can't permanently live there. You'd have to own the land to permanently live there, which requires money. So slowly our civilization is coming up with less and less examples of situations like that.
Yeah, I mean, we're moving into a period now which is difficult to understand when we're talking about cryptocurrencies and we talk about metaverses. You know, all these things are and NFTs. You know, they're sort of where is the ownership? Well, yeah, where does all this lead us? But this is talking about the future, and yeah, I find these things difficult to appreciate. But you know, if you're a gamer, apparently, if you're a gamer, you're well into the metaverse and these things. And you know, life has changed an awful lot, and you know how people can sort of earn the money. We were in Dubai and we were invited to a barbecue. Great, and we're talking to this young guy, yeah, really young, only in his early 20s. And said, "Oh, what do you do?" And he said, "Oh, I trade cryptocurrencies." Really? So yeah, tell us about it. So, you know, yes, money is it's essential to understand that, you know, having money helps the things to move around, and you can do things. You have to pay for things. Well, sometimes you do. Sometimes, if you're very lucky, people pay for you, and yeah, but you need to be very famous when people start to buy your lunches.
Thank you, Joe. And just as an extension of this conversation, is finance necessary for everyone? And finance, I'm not talking about funding, which it's commonly confused. I'm talking about the area where I specialize in, which is the academic version of that, the science of finance. Do you think that's necessary as well?
I think it's important to learn that now. Very important to learn financing. If you're part of a business and you're running a business, either you need a very good person who knows all about financing, who can guide you in that area, because you may be a technician, you may be the ideas man, but you certainly need to have the financing. You need to have that, be part of that world. You need your company to be part of that world, because that's the way that you can move it. If you've got good ideas, you might, like I had to wait 11 years to get into America.
Wow.
I got in there, but it took me 11 years. Maybe if I'd have had somebody with a better financial background, maybe we could have done that earlier. But yes, I mean, the science of finance now is so important to industry, to business.
Thank you, Joe. Brilliant answer. Brilliant answer. All right. How important is having a purpose in business? What is your purpose?
To succeed, to if you have an idea and you're not fully convinced that it'll work, chances are it won't work. So you have to have total belief in what you're doing. And I think that so important to, and because if you don't believe in it, nobody else will. and you've got to transfer that feeling. We've got to all move forward together with this idea. And yes, there are many cliches out there, and make a difference, all these things. But it is important. I think it's more important to believe in what you're doing. If you've got that belief, and then you've got your purpose, and then other people will believe with you. And you've just, so important also to have integrity. You just have that integrity there, that people do feel that they can trust you, and that's so important for me in business.
What would you say your purpose is at this point right now? I know we probably all got different purposes, different states in life, but like right this moment, what would you say your purpose in life would be?
I think my purpose in life is really to enjoy the fact of having written a book, and to now try to persuade other people to read it and to buy it, as well as read it. But I think that's my purpose. My purpose is now that you can sit back and you can do nothing if you like and just rest. But I've done that. I've done my bit of sitting back, and I've now got the opportunity with a book. Now that it's published, I've got the opportunity to have a different purpose. And I think it's too easy to have no purpose in life. I think it's too easy to accept that, well, maybe I'm now in my 60s or early 70s. I should be retired and doing nothing. Doing nothing isn't a purpose for me.
Yeah. Out of college, I was a retirement specialist for the largest investment company out there called Vanguard. That was my first job out of college. So all I did all day long, I was 22 years old. I listened to people tell me about retirement. And then 6 months later, after we moved all their money into IRAs, I get a phone call from their spouse or their husband, wife or husband. Yeah, Jane or John Doe died, because they were bored out of their mind for 6 months.
Yeah.
And it's true. It really, people can't last. The average person doesn't last past 6 months when they retire, especially at an older age. So
older age, absolutely. Well, we have a friend, and it's exactly that way. That everybody thought that they should take the worries away, take this away, invest his money this way and do whatever. And we decided that what happened, and he did die, but everybody taking his toys away. Yeah. Even if it was just playing with things, take all the toys away, and that's it. Yes. So I agree. You need a purpose, and as you were saying, retirement. Okay. So I'm 86. It's a number, and maybe I'm not as nimble as I used to be. But there's so much going on in life that, and yes, we do have a purpose. Where are we traveling next? And how do we make more? How can we get more sales to the book? It's not actually looking for sales; it's looking for connections. So these connections, we drive the, like you say, it's a business book now. People are saying, "Well, how did you do that?" It's in the book. So we're enjoying it. great purpose right now.
I think just to hear what you said, I think to restate that, really, it sounds like your purpose is to spread your story, to maximize your story to as many people as possible. Yeah, it's definitely not about the sales, right? Like it's about getting that story of your grandfather, your legacy, your whole family, not just Joe Foster. Sounds like you want to get that whole story out there, which is important. I mean, it's not just, the more I hear from you, Joe, it's not just your story and even your family story. It's a story of like this clothing industry and the sporting industry coming together. I mean, you got an important perspective of what's going on with humanity. I mean, that's another deeper way to look at it too. So I don't know.
I mean, exactly. It is something you can't just say, look, I want £1 million or $1 million. I think it's a matter of saying, no, we've written a book.
Yeah.
Now is the time to sort of, come on, read my book. No, they say no good if I'm the only one that reads it. It's, we want other people to read it and other people to enjoy the story. And if they get something out of it, and if they feel there's something there that is interesting business-wise, then fine. We're happy with what they get out of it. But yes, tell the family story, and who knows? Well, we're not going to stop.
Yeah, what would you like to do in the next 10 years, Joe? Like what's the plan for talking about the future? Maybe a movie out of this book?
Well, we have been approached already, but we're not quite ready to do that yet. We think we need to spread the word a little bit more. But this does. We've got, I think it's 3 people now who are very interested in making it into a movie. Certainly, certainly one of those will be very interesting to do, and yeah, that could be good fun.
Thank you, Joe. What would you like to be your legacy to this world?
He worked hard and enjoyed it.
I like it. All right, Joe. So I had like 5 to 10 other questions, but I shifted up because I wanted to make sure I respect your time. Totally your call. We can take an intermission if you want to. Maybe a minute to 2 minutes of those questions, but I can save them for the clubhouse. Totally your call. But this interview for sure, I'd like to make it your best one. So it's up to you.
Yeah, I think right now it's better if we save this one to the clubhouse. I think that would be good. I think we've done an hour and a half, something like that.
Yeah.
And as you can tell, the voices are getting a bit sort of challenged.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Let me I want to check real quick. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I could save a lot of these for the clubhouse interview. One thing we didn't talk about though is branding that much. I think if we could just do that one question, I think it would be good. How important is having a brand for a business? Like, because you created a company,
yes,
where you created a brand for that company to build it, and everything you did was Reebok. Like it all started from that brand. Any message for other people who, like an entrepreneur just starting out, especially right now, how important is branding from the get-go?
I think in the particular industry we're in, certainly in where you have a commodity, I think it's absolutely essential to create a brand, because a brand gives you, it increases your image, and it increases your opportunity to get value. It adds value. You create a brand, it does add value to your product. People just love brands, whether it be a car or whether it be something. What we're in now is sport, and sport is good because you can associate it very much with sports people. So branding for me is, it's number one. We started off as Mercury Sports Footwear. And as Mercury Sports Footwear, we tried to register the brand because our accountant said, you need to do that. And I couldn't register it. It was already pre-registered. And then we went through a performance, and I went to see a patent agent, and the patent agent said, look, this brand is already registered, and they're offering it to you for £1,000. So they offered us Mercury for £1,000. We hadn't got that money at that time. That was just impossible. We not got $1,000, no anything like £1,000. So he said, well, what you've got to do is to find a new name. And he pointed through his window. He pointed at Kodak. And I said, well, what's with Kodak? And he said, well, Kodak, they made the name up. It's theirs. They made it up. It's not just a name in a dictionary or whatever. They made it up. Okay. He said, but don't bring me one name. Bring me 10. And, you know, I'm thinking, how do you bring somebody 10 names? So I went back and we sit around the table thinking about names. And we're thinking, Cougar, that's a good one. And yeah, Cougar. Or Falcon, that's another good name. But let me take you back to 1943. I'm 8 years old. And a bit like COVID, people couldn't go anywhere because there's a war on. But I was entered into a race. I think my father entered into a local event. It was I think it was 80 or 60 yards race, and I won it. I had spikes, of course, which helped in those days, but I won it, and I went up to collect my prize. And my prize was a dictionary. And I'm saying, where's the football? A dictionary. I'm 8 years old. What do I want with a dictionary? But more than that, it was an American dictionary. It was a Webster's American dictionary. Of course, I didn't know at the time, but the spellings are different. You know, we spell color with a U, and in America it's no U, and you know, numerous spellings like that. So now back to 1960, we were looking for a new name, and I've got my dictionary, it's sat there. And I thought, well, I like the letter R. Very important. I don't know why, but I love the letter R. And I opened my dictionary at letter R, and I'm flipping through the pages, and I come across R, E-E-B-O-K. What's that? Oh, it's a small South African gazelle. We're a running company. Gazelle. Fantastic. That, with another 8 names, 9 names, I took to the agent, and I said, look, we have to be in love with this. This has got to be our passion. And I want that name, Reebok. I need that. And he was saying, well, you know, we'll see what we can do. As it happened, this was the only one. Reebok was the only one that came clear. There was just one caveat. And the registrar said, if somebody comes to me and we're making shoes out of Reebok skin, you can't stop them. Well, you know, I looked at Jeff and we looked at each other and said, yeah, that'll never happen. Nobody doing that. So that's how we got Reebok. 20 years after, because the registrar put us, because of that, the registrar put us in the B section of the register. Not that I knew the difference between the A or the B section, but put us in the B. 20 years later, he came back and he said, we're just moving from the B section to the A section. Oh, why is that? He said, because now everybody knows that Reebok is a shoe, it's a sports shoe. It's no longer an animal reference. So that's how we came Reebok. And that was brand, you know. So for me, we needed a brand that we could be in love with. And I think that's so important.
Thank you, Joe. That's why I wanted to bring that point up there, because I knew you were going to incorporate the story of Reebok, like how you got the name. We totally didn't talk about that. It's a huge part of the overall story. That's incredible. Yeah. So you basically was named after a South African bird, pretty much, right?
No, gazelle.
Oh, gazelle. I'm sorry.
Gazelle. Yeah. South African gazelle, which is a deer, an antelope, whatever, but a gazelle. So yeah, that was our name.
Wow.
That is our name.
That is your name, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. All right. So thank you for spending the time today. And again, honored to have you here. And folks, you're watching the interview. This is not Julie Foster. It's Joe Foster. I know on this screen it says Julie Foster, but this is Joe Foster. He's the founder of Reebok. So Joe, before I close out, I'd like to give you the floor to say pretty much anything you want. If you want to talk about your book or whatnot, the floor is yours, Joe.
Well, thank you, Tony. This has been delightful to once again speak about Reebok and the J.W. Foster story. Now Joe Foster story, and it's been a pleasure to talk to Tony about finance on the live podcast. It's great, and look forward to meeting you once more. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Where can they find more information about you? Are you on social media? Do you have a website you want to share?
We have a website, which is jwfosterheritage.com. So get us on that, and you can buy the book through that, or it still is available through Amazon, and it will soon be very available through Amazon. We're republishing back in the USA. So yes, look out for the book. I'm sure you'll find it interesting.
Thank you, Joe. All right, Joe, if you can just hang up for just a moment after I close out. I'm going to close out now, and I just want to say goodbye. But folks, thank you again for watching. This is Dr. Anthony Criniti IV, also known as Dr. Finance, and you've been watching the Dr. Finance Live podcast. And don't forget, folks, to follow, like, and subscribe. If you want to get more information, we got the website right here, drfinance.info. Okay, so check that out. Get on the newsletter. We got 3 major books here that I published, starting from The Necessity of Finance. I wrote that for my finance students about 10 years ago. The Most Important Lessons in Economics and Finance, and then The Survival of the Richest. Also, check out Joe Foster, his book as well. One more last glance here. This is called The Shoemaker, from Joe Foster, and his social media sites. Thank you again, folks. Don't forget to follow and like and subscribe. We're going to have a YouTube, and we're going to post it out to all the podcast directories as well. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks again, Joe. Appreciate it. Bye-bye now.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you very much. Bye.